Hey you guys, it's Peter, and welcome to my channel, Peterisms, where I tell stories of my life and just little things that I've learned as I've grown into the person that I am today. And today I am responding to a comment that I received on a video, not a video on this channel, a video that I did on my Peter Monn channel. I believe it was a video where I was talking about taking accountability and explaining why taking accountability is important to me. And in that video, I think I referenced several prayers that I say in my life, and I kind of explained my morning routine of doing prayers and meditations and things like that. And one of the prayers that I talked about was a prayer that a friend of mine, I believe he made it up, but I could be wrong. I don't know. I don't really remember that well. But it was a prayer that he taught me when I was in aftercare with him after I got out of treatment. And the prayer was, help me to want what I already have. And in the video, I made a comment about the fact that it's not a religious prayer. Like, you can say it to the universe, you can say it to yourself, you can say it as a daily positive affirmation and things like that. And I don't know if this person doesn't watch my Peterisms channel, where I talk about the difference between religion and spirituality, or why I claim to be a spiritual person and not a religious person, or on and on and on. But I got this comment, which is interesting because this person has now since deleted their comment because I responded to it. They might have thought that my response to them was nasty, but I didn't mean it that way. I meant, you can go find out where I'm going to respond to this. So they left me a comment and they said, it shouldn't matter if it's a religious prayer or not. You're so worried that someone will maybe think you're religious, and it's strange. And I responded and I said, interesting comment. I'll be addressing this on my Peterisms channel today, okay? So let's read the comment again. It shouldn't matter if it's a religious prayer or not. You're so worried that someone will maybe think you're religious, and it's strange. First of all, I don't really care what anybody thinks about my religiosity, my spirituality, my lack of religiosity, my lack of spirituality, my spiritual foundation, what I believe, what I don't believe, what my higher power is or not. I don't really care what anybody thinks, okay? And neither should you about your own belief systems, because that's personal. It's a personal relationship, right? But a lot of people do ask me about that, you know? And many of the prayers that I say the Lord's Prayer every single day, you know? It's something, I say it in the morning and I say it at night before I go to bed. The Lord's Prayer is something that we close a lot of meetings, not all, but some meetings with in recovery. And a lot of people choose to not stand in the circle and say the Lord's Prayer, or they'll hold hands in the circle to show unity, but they don't say the Lord's Prayer because they feel like it's a religious prayer. I don't necessarily feel like it's a religious prayer. I feel like when I'm saying it, I'm just speaking to my understanding of what my higher power is, right? But I thought this was an interesting comment, and I'm addressing it not to just kind of be spiteful or whatever, but I think it's an important topic to talk about, right? Because the reason why I say, and I just said the other day in my video, you know, like, if you're not a religious person, if you're not a spiritual person, you know, you can speak to the universe, you can say positive affirmations to yourself. The reason why I say those things is because for years, I was very anti-religion, okay? For really no reason whatsoever, because I had never really had any bad experiences with religion. But I did know what certain religious people believed about gay people. And so that was always, this was when I was much younger, so that was always kind of my stance, right? That religion is this, like, horrible thing and whatever. I do not feel that way today. You know, my mother was a woman of strong faith. I have a lot of friends of mine that go to church and are very active in their churches. There's a lot of people in recovery that are very active in churches. There's a lot of people in recovery that are not super religious and never go to church, right? Or that have huge issues with their churches that they were growing up in, which is one of the reasons why I feel the way that I do. But for a long time, I took kind of a negative stance against it. So for me, if you had come to me during that time and wanted to share a message to me about gratitude, or about resentment, or about removing anger, or removing toxicity from your life, or if you had said to me at that time in my life, okay, anything about, like, recovery or getting sober or whatever, and you had said something to the effect of, and I'm just using this as an example, okay, well, at that time in my life, when I was anti, you know, any kind of religiosity or spirituality because I didn't fully understand my own belief system, if you had come to me and said anything like, and I think this is a topic we don't talk enough about because we're scared, so I'm going to say it, okay, but if anybody at that point approached me and said, well, God says, or Jesus says, or Buddha says, or I would have been like, you need to stand back, okay? Like, don't come with me with your Bible thumping. Don't come with me with your Zen Buddhism. I don't want to hear it, okay? Like, I don't even know what I believe, so don't be starting that with that, right? Which is why I don't want people to miss the message of what I say. And so I explain that you can take words like God out of a prayer and make them a non-denominational, non-religious, non-spiritual prayer. You can make it a daily affirmation. I do think that that's important, you know? when I got sober, I was very anti-God. I was very anti-spirituality. Didn't even consider myself really that spiritual of a person. I believed that there was something out there. I was very agnostic. I believe there was something out there because I can't imagine that trees and all of this in the world and human beings, all this comes out of nowhere. You know, which is funny because my husband's a complete atheist and I highly respect that. So no, I'm not worried about, you know, anybody thinking that I'm religious or not, right? And if I was, I would own that. I share those stories to help somebody out there that maybe is walking where I did 25, 26 years ago, you know, and is trying to figure things out. And I also don't want anybody turned off from my message, you know. When I got sober, and I've shared this story in many of my videos, didn't have a concept of my higher power. And I've even shared that, you know, like when I got to steps 2 and step 3, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity and made a decision to turn our life and our will over to the care of God as we understood Him. When I came to those steps, like, I fully needed to understand what my higher power was, and my sponsor at the time got so frustrated with me, and he said, God either is or He isn't. Like, you know, like, what is it? Like, I was like, He is, you know. Now I don't even know if it's a he or her or what or a them or who. I don't even care, okay? I just know that there's something bigger than me and I'm not it, right? So I have some ideas of what that means for me, but that's what I know today. And I believe in a all-encompassing, omniscient, loving, guiding God that is here to teach me lessons in my life that are helpful to the growth of my life and helping me to experience. You know, I love, like, Oprah asked RuPaul the meaning of life in an interview, and RuPaul said, the meaning of our life is to correct the mistakes of our past, clean up the wreckage of our past, and then to live the best life that we possibly can as an example to other people. And that's what I want to do, right? So I don't want anybody to miss that message because I say something that is off-putting to them, like it was to me. For example, I was in a meeting in early sobriety. I've shared this story before. And the topic was like the 3rd step or something. I don't know, it was some kind of like spiritual topic. And everybody was like, God this, God that, God this, God that. And I was so turned off by it that I went to the back of the room and, you know, was standing there smoking a cigarette. And this woman came back to me and she said, why'd you leave the meeting? I mean, I can see it in my head. I remember this like vividly. And she said, because this was a profound moment of change for me. And she said, why did you leave the meeting? And I said, I left the meeting because they were talking about God. And she was like, baby, is that what you heard? And I said, yes. And she goes, take what you like and leave the rest. And for me, that was like such an opening moment for me as a person that was so angry at not understanding why maybe God made me gay or God made me an alcoholic and an addict or having resentment towards a higher power, which I didn't even feel like if you're going to believe in a higher power that you have the right to be angry or upset with a higher power, which then I went through all of that again when my mom passed away because I was so angry at God. I was like, how dare you take away the one person I'm closest to in my life, right? And so I had this very confusing relationship with God through the years, you know, which for me, the flip side of that is just being honest with myself and going on my own spiritual journey. You know, if I had come into a 12-step program and any of the meetings that I went to, and I actually had somebody reach out to me about this not too long ago about kind of a sister program that is more religious. It's called Celebrate Recovery. And the person reached out to me and said, you know, I've been going to this for a long time, which I don't have anything negative to say about Celebrate Recovery. If that's your thing, do it, right? It's not mine, whatever. But they are a 12-step program based on Christianity. And this person was saying to me that as a gay man that had been sober for a while, that he felt like this person was condemning him in meetings and saying things like about Jesus says this. And I said, you maybe need to try a 12-step program that's non-denominational, because 12-step programs are. And I think people get confused about that sometimes because the language of the literature is sometimes old-timey and seems biblical and things like that. Had I come into a 12-step program December 17th of 1994, and I had been met with, you must believe these religious doctrines, I would not be sober here today. Had many of my friends that suffered at the hands of the church or had really negative experiences with churches or with people that worked in churches, had they gone into a 12-step program and were told that they had to follow religious doctrine or they had to believe certain spiritual things, they would not be here on this planet today. They would probably be dead. It was the openness of coming into a 12-step program where you can come up with your own higher power and understanding of that allowed them to, people that were so closed off from ever believing in a higher power and were so angry at God or a higher power, whatever they chose to call him, her, she, them, that, whatever, okay, that they were then able to open with a loving heart, maybe some kind of understanding or relationship with a higher power, which is why we say higher power, higher than us, right? That's why we say that. And that's why I'm very clear on here. You know, there's a recovery saying that is, religion is for people that are afraid of going to hell, and spirituality is for people that have already been there. I've already been to hell and back, okay? And I'm not closed off to the idea of going to church. You know, many of my friends ask me on a regular basis, would you like to go to church with me? And I'm like, no. They don't condemn me for it. They don't say you're going to sin if you don't go to church. They ask me, I mean, Melissa and Jason were the first people years ago, you know, and I've had many friends since then that were like, hey, if you ever want to go to church, our church is very liberal and we have gay people that go to our church and you might enjoy it. And they just leave the door open. And maybe one day I'll decide to do it. You know, sometimes at Christmas time, I miss going to the hymn, hearing the Christmas hymns in churches and the candle-lit midnight mass. I miss, or I never went to mass, like Catholic mass, but Catholic service, or the midnight services, you know, with the hymns. I miss that, right? So maybe someday I will again. I'm not turned off by the idea of church. I'm not turned off by the idea of religiosity as long as it doesn't hurt other people. I think there can be a lot to be said for that. And I respect people who have relationships with religious ideologies. I respect them greatly. That's their choice. But that's not for me. You know, for years ago, I saw this bumper sticker on a car that said something to the effect of, you don't have to park your car, you don't have to be in a garage to be a car, you don't have to be in a church to be a Christian. And like, it's that kind of ideology, right? That like, I don't have to be sitting in a church or a temple or whatever, you know, to have a relationship with a higher power. I can have it sitting right out here on my front porch, just listening to the birds chirp. I can have that relationship with my higher power of my understanding. The reason why I say things like, you don't have to make this a religious prayer, it doesn't have to be a religious prayer, is for you. If there are people out there that are struggling with the same thing that I struggled with a long time ago, I don't want you to miss the message. I don't want you to miss the miracle. Not me. I'm not the message. I'm not the miracle. I don't want you to miss hearing something in a meditation that you might need to hear, or hearing something in a prayer that you might need to hear. You know, because for a lot of people, if I say, help me to want what I already have, and you say that to yourself as an affirmation, Peter, help me to want what I already have. Or you say, God, help me to want what I already have. To a lot of people out there, that is a completely different connotation. To me, that even has a different connotation. As a spiritual person that believes in God, that is two completely different belief systems. So yes, that is why I do that. Out of protection for people to be able to have whatever spiritual religious beliefs they want to, or lack thereof, and not believe in anything, and realize that they can still work through grief, work through pain in their life, become sober, get sober, stay sober. Work through resentment, work through anger, set boundaries with toxic people in their life. You don't have to be a religious person to do that, you know? But I'm not afraid of, you know, like sharing it, and I don't think it's strange. I think it's important, you know, to talk about this. We're afraid to talk about this. God is one of the things that people hide behind God. I remember years and years and years ago, I had a dear friend of mine that I had been close with for many, many years. We have since reconciled. But she started getting involved in this church, and she was like real deep into it. And I remember I was talking to her. I mean, she'd been a friend of mine for like since elementary school. I mean, this was like when I was like I had been sober for a couple of years, so I was probably 26, 27, 28. It was when I was with my first boyfriend, and I can remember I talked to her on the phone, and she said something to me about the range of sins, and she said something to me about like, she goes, well, I mean, this was somebody that had gone to a lot of gay bars and had birthday parties where she got a birthday cake by a drag queen and all of her friends were gay and things like that. And she said to me, you know, like, you know, it's a sin to be gay. She had been going to this church for about 2 weeks, okay? And I said, excuse me? And she goes, it's a sin to be gay. And these are the churches I don't support. Just so you know. You have your belief systems all you want. I don't support your church if you believe in something that I am, okay? So she said that to me, and I said, and I kind of edit this out usually when I say it, but I'm going to say it exactly how it happened. And I said, how can you say that? She goes, well, I mean, it's not the worst sin. And I said, what do you mean it's not the worst sin? She goes, well, there's like a level of sins. And she said, it's not the worst sin. She goes, it's worse than rape, but not as bad as murder. And I said, I can't continue this friendship. And she said, what? And she said, I mean, I would always help you. I'd have you over to my house, whatever. And I said, I'm not sure, and I'm being honest with you, where I was at 26 years, 27 years old. I said, I'm not sure that I would welcome you in my home. If you believe that I'm worse than some of these people out there and I'm close to being a murderer as a gay person, no, I don't think we can continue this friendship. And I was so devastated by it, right? And I talked to my mom about it. And my mom, who was a person of very strong faith, did kids club and, Bible study and what do you call it, Sunday school, and she was an elder in her church and did communion and things, like set up the communion. I mean, she was very involved in her church for a long time, and was also very educated on world religions, and really, like, as she got older, believed in, like, the similarities between, like, Jesus and Buddha and things like that, and as a people of loving and peacefulness, right? And so she really had a true understanding of people and their relationships with religion. And what she said to me was, I'll never forget this, she said, Peter, people hide behind religion because they're afraid. And many times, religion tells them what to do to get away from the fear. Instead of addressing their fear directly or addressing it with their higher power, the religion doctrinates what they should do and what they should think. That way, they don't have to be afraid anymore. Therefore, if you go to a church that tells you, these are the levels of sin. 1 is this, 2 is this, 3 is this, 4 is being gay. 4 is pretty bad, right? Then they can go, and then they believe that, and then they don't have to be afraid anymore of being a sinner or whatever, right? And she was like, what you need to do is you need to pray for this person, this friend. She knew this friend of mine. She was like, you need to pray for her because this is really pretty scary and pretty sad, And that friendship really took, we didn't talk for years. For years. We made up years later, but we didn't talk for a very long time. And I always remember that about what my mom said, is that people hide behind religion because they're scared. So when people are attacking you from a religious point of view, the reason I don't even engage in those conversations is because, not like in this, I think this is an important topic to talk about, but when people come to me and say, like, well, God made Adam and Eve, not Adam and Steve, I don't even engage in those conversations because there's no point to, okay? Because for some reason they're threatened by my life, or they're threatened that I'm affecting family values and things like that. By me sitting here on my front porch talking to my neighbors, getting ready to do a review of pie, and I have a husband and a dog, and we travel with friends, and we have family. Like, I'm a threat to family values just because I exist. No, you have some fear out there, okay, that you need to hide behind what you're told and what you're told to do. That's my issue with certain religiosities, but for the rest of them, and I'm not just talking about ones that are only, accepting of gay people. I think there's a lot of religious beliefs out there that are pretty healthy that have really made no stance on it whatsoever, so, but that doesn't work for me. And I don't even think that if I wasn't gay, I just think the person that I am inside, that I felt more spiritual standing outside, or I feel more spiritual standing outside with my dog late at night looking at the stars, or listening to Both Sides Now by Joni Mitchell or Judy Collins, or the scene in Coda, which is one of the best scenes ever in a movie of Both Sides Now, or, just sitting on my front porch feeling the breeze. I feel more spiritual and more connected to my higher power then than I do in other ways, And so I don't find a necessity to go to a church to teach me what I already know in my heart and soul. But I don't disrespect anybody that does. If you do, and your belief system isn't harming anybody or putting anybody down, believe what you want to believe. I think that's fantastic that works for you. I'm really happy that my mom had that in her life, I'm very happy for her that she had that in her life. She clung to it. It meant a lot to her, But I think it's also important that we don't exclude people that have no belief systems. And that's why I always explain how we can turn prayers into non-denominational prayers and talk about meditations. And I do say the word God. Back in the day when I started reading meditations, and Melody Beatty has God all throughout her meditations, right? I would edit those pieces out. I don't do that anymore. Because I've taught you how to do that. And people taught me how to do that. And I can read through it. And maybe some days I want to read more about God, and other days I don't, And I can take what I like and I can leave the rest. And that's my choice as a human being. And one of my old sponsors that has since passed, and I love this man dearly, he was very, very wise. And he would always say to me, how did he say it? I don't want to get it wrong. He would say, we're not human beings having a spiritual experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. And I think it's really important to think that way, wherever that leads you. To the front yard to look at the stars, or whether that leads you to the steps of a church. Wherever that leads you, So anyway, let me know what you think about that in the comment section below. I love you guys so much, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.